Okay, so remember that they're changing my voice. This video is about how Proverbs 10:2 connects to James 2:26. Ill-gotten treasures have no lasting value, but righteousness delivers from death. This has everything to do with Proverbs 10:31. From the mouth of the righteous comes the fruit of wisdom, but a perverse tongue will be silenced. So wisdom comes out of the mouth of the righteous, right? And that keeps you from going down to the realm of the dead. It keeps you from living a sinful life and wasting your life, right? That's why when they call, somebody a waste of life, it goes back to the play on words for waste being a play on words for waste set. Okay. And also to waste somebody, right? To kill somebody. They were wasted. That's key there as well. So in James 2:26 it says, as the body without the spirit is dead, faith without works is dead. Now it's important to note that there's a lot of people trying to confuse people about these things. For example, I just saw a video about this group of Hasidic Jews in New York, and you could tell that they had a lot of problem with their brain function, right? The various components of their brain. The thalamus, cerebrum, cerebellum, okay, the frontal lobe, hippocampus, okay, the cortices, you name it. They have problems with their brain function, and it comes out, and we see the developmental disorders. We see the problem with their brain activity to some degree. And this is very common with these rabbis and these various types of people. It's also with the English royals. You see it as well to some degree. And some have hyperactivity disorder as a result. Now, I'm not making fun of them. I'm trying to help you understand the situation here. The Spirit of God gives you a certain discernment. And some people, they don't want to admit to themselves they don't have it. And it's created a sort of narcissistic disorder in them, and at times a sadistic disorder. If you look at Proverbs 10, verse 21, it says, the lips of the righteous nourish many, but fools die for lack of sense. Now, when they allow themselves to follow fools like their false messiah, okay, there's one guy named the Mashiach or something to this effect. Okay, they're not using insight. They're not using wisdom. They're following folly to the realm of the dead for a lack of sense, right? The word being used is sense. So what's the difference between, the samurai in popular culture, the samurai teacher, the sensei in karate, and one of these Jewish rabbis, right? Well, the Jewish rabbi is clearly more scatterbrained. And if you were to see me compared to any, karate master in history, you'll see that I'm much more intense and sharp than they are. And so you see these kind of points of references. On the Messiah is super sharp. And the samurai teacher. And then you have these Jewish rabbis, and historically some of these liberal Jews, wherever they are, used to, and they probably still do, used to make fun of martial arts. They do funny movements, and they say hiya hiya, and they try to make fun of it. And it has to do with the fact that in their book it makes it clear to them that I'm right about this, right? Proverbs 10:21. Write it down if you think I'm being unfair or racist, or you think it shouldn't be said, and think about why I'm right and the implications here. No offense to anybody, no offense to Jews, what have you. The lips of the righteous nourish many, but fools die for lack of sense. Now, if you have a problem with your brain, you have a problem with your brain. It's not a big deal. It becomes a big deal when you want to pretend that you're something that you're not. This goes back to Proverbs 10:16. The wages of the righteous is life, but the earnings of the wicked are sin and death. So they're letting their lack of sense make them wicked, make their hearts wicked, which makes them have little value. And it's causing them to come into a state of being the walking dead, a state of sin. And the word sin is like the word sign for a reason. And you have that G in it, right? The G is the earth deity in the Greco-Roman system. G, GE, and Gaia. And GE is a play on words for egg. So they keep reproducing the refusal to acknowledge where the New Testament is right and the Old Testament is wrong. And that has to do with the fact that the idea of the Messiah, okay, the idea in its figurative form has come and left already in a way that's more like the New Testament than the Old Testament. It's a way that has to do with the righteous being taken away to be spared for evil. It's that generational kind of royal leader, royal alpha idea. And now we're at the end. We're at the end of the timeline, the end of the story. And I'm the last valid alpha, the last valid leader of humanity ever possible. So when we look at the various groups of people, we look at the Muslims, we can see their complex and we can see their brain function and activity. When we look at the Christians and the Jews, same thing, the Hindus, Buddhists, when we look at, we can see their insufficiencies. For example, if you saw a bird struggling to, fly and it's just wobbling around, it just decides to start running on the ground or hopping around, okay? You'd say, hey, there's something wrong with that bird. And so we see that the organized religions and everyone else, we can see that there's something wrong with them. They're not in touch with God. They're living mere human rules, customs, and traditions. And they've let their complex direct them. And that shows a lack of sense. Again, Proverbs 10:23, a fool finds pleasure in wicked schemes. Excuse me, that's the verse before that. Verse 21, rather, 2 verses before that. The lips of the righteous nourish many, but fools die for lack of sense. Verse 23, a fool finds pleasures in wicked schemes, but a person of understanding delights in wisdom. So they end up finding pleasure in wicked schemes because of their complex. Now, where does their complex come from? It comes from their brain function. And the brain function, you want the brain function to be natural. Supernatural to the natural. So when they try to interfere with my brain function, it doesn't change the fact that I'm me, that I'm God's son. But with other people, okay, they can't, in an unnatural and unfair way, breed or use a machine to create a certain brain function to magically connect to God. It doesn't work like that, because it's justice that connects one to God. It is being in the divine order, and you can't mimic that with mere science. So we see in their brain activity and how it expresses itself in their behavior, okay, that they're finding pleasure in wicked schemes. And so it is with the contrast game that typically rich Europeans in popular culture would play, right? The colonists would have you. They'd put on their wigs and they'd go into their scientific departments in their fancy schools, and they would pretend that their brain function is better than others, that they're sharper, that they're smarter, that their genes are magically better. And again, that is a wicked scheme that they're trying to find pleasure in. So it also refers to even these bitter guys who you might say, hey, they're not having pleasure in it, but they're choosing it. They're choosing to quote unquote delight in it. They're just not living in a state of true pleasure. They're like giddy and geeking maybe, or they're just calmer at some moments. They're not truly connecting to God. So as we look at the different groups in society, no matter what they are, you should be able to see clear as day that I'm right. Proverbs goes on and on about things like discipline and sense. These martial art principles, these things aren't, separate from the idea of being in the divine order. They have everything to do with it. Right? Proverbs 10, verse 17, whoever heeds discipline shows the way to life, but whoever ignores correction leads others astray, right? They're ignoring this correction. They're ignoring it from nature, they're ignoring it from the signs they see in society and in each other, and they're ignoring it from me. Okay? Discipline is the way to life. What kind of discipline? A discipline to be moral, not to merely be in the military or police or some martial arts school. Okay, you have to be moral, and to truly be moral, you have to be in the divine order. The way, the truth, and the life. If one isn't disciplined to obey God through me, they're not going to heaven. Except for my parents, who are blameless. And it's a long story why that is and how I achieved that verdict, but to make a long story short, it has to do with them bringing me into this world. Okay. So let's end it with Proverbs 10:31. From the mouth of the righteous comes the fruit of wisdom, but a perverse tongue will be silenced. Now, why am I ending it here? Well, let's do one more verse here. The reason why I'm ending it here has to do with how that verse connects to verse 19. Sin is not ended by multiplying words, but the prudent hold their tongues. And of course, the verse before that is key here as well. What the heck? Let's just do one last verse. Okay, so we did 3 more verses instead of 1. That's okay. Whoever conceals hatred with lying lips and spreads slander is a fool. So, if you conceal the fact that you are against their false religions and instead join them in spreading slander by not speaking on it or by pretending they're right, then you're a fool. And fools die for lack of sense. And instead, the prudent hold their tongues when one should hold their tongue. They don't make a foolish action, right? The actions speak louder than words. They don't make the mistake of doing the wrong thing. They have the discipline to avoid cheating me out of my right to lead. That inclination they have, that temptation from the devil to cheat me out of my right to lead, they don't give in to it. They're prudent, they're scrambling to do what's right, and they're not giving in to the temptation to do what's wrong. I'll leave it there because it also has the application of don't go on and on and on for no reason. People should know that I'm right. Also, it's important to note that part of the reason why they're fuming me is they're trying to make it so I seem more like, these Hasidic Jews from New York in their synagogue or in their school, and they're scatterbrained and they're having trouble getting their thoughts together. That's not me naturally. They fume me and poison me, okay? My father's a brain surgeon. He's a very serious person, not a scatterbrained person, and so am I. Thank you.